Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome to Ohale Avatenu, Tents of Our Fathers. So I took a couple weeks off to celebrate the Chag, but now I am back full swing. And this week's Torah portion is Tazria Metzorah, and it is one of my favorites. There is so much good material here, so much profound teaching. And today I wanted to talk specifically about the leprosy in a house, and to discuss some spiritual application to this idea. Now, obviously, we don't want to hyper-spiritualize everything. If you have leprosy in your house, mold growing, whatever the case may be, it's not going to be good for you. You don't want to allow that to fester. Mold and spreading diseases in your home, in your clothes, on your body, none of those things are great for your health, for the health of those around you, and they need to be addressed and dealt with. But I wanted to talk about a spiritual application and consideration today. And there is, well, let me start with a story. There was an individual that I was talking with once, and we were discussing something. I don't even remember what it was. This was quite a number of years ago, but this individual said something very strange to me that I could not understand what they were implying. And so I tried to explain to them that the manner in which they were speaking to me, it was not clear what they were trying to convey. And this person responded with, person A told me that, person B told me that, person C told me that, now you're telling me that. I don't know what's wrong with all of you. Well, I mean, if you're the common denominator, right? Sometimes it is everybody else. That does happen. You cannot take a wrong consensus as proof against fact. Fair enough. But if a issue keeps recurring again and again and again, then I would like to invite you to ask yourself what the common denominators are. Is it always everybody else? It might be sometimes. But sometimes maybe it's you. I love my wife. My wife, she has amazing things to say at times. And, oftentimes you'll hear people in the church say these sayings that are found nowhere in Scripture, but they are some sort of a cognitive shortcut to justify whatever's going on in their life. And it's like, well, if things are hard or things are going rough, it's proof you're doing something right because the devil's against you. Well, as my wife likes to say, maybe it's because sometimes you're dumb and make bad choices. And yeah, if you decide to not keep an eye on your bank accounts, if you decide to not pay your taxes, if you decide to not work and do those things, is it the devil that's destroying your finances, or are you not managing your life properly, right? So it could be one, right? Maybe you're in a Job situation where the Almighty has given permission to the adversary to put you through some things for a while. Maybe. And we don't want to look at trials as proof positive that there's sin in your life. like Job's friends did. We can minister to the person who's suffering. But sometimes it is you. Sometimes it is your lack of preparation, your lack of care. So, the spiritual application to Tazria Metzorah. We have a lot of commentary in times past which talk about the relationship between this leprosy, as it's often translated into the English, with lashon hara, evil speech. Why? Because as you go through the laws of leprosy, whether you're talking about the leprous person or the stones of a house that are leprous that need, and you got to carve out the plaster and remove the stones, everything goes outside the camp to an unclean place. The leprous person goes outside the camp to an unclean place. What happens to someone when you gossip about them, when you speak evil about them, when everybody starts talking? Well, like this Metzorah, like this leprosy, you have this thing which spreads, right? Gossip tends to spread through the camp, false information, a juicy morsel of drama that you can talk about. Oh, did you hear what happened to so and so? Those things tend to spread. And they also can tend to make someone feel outside of fellowship, outside of the proverbial camp. When you know everybody is talking about you, and they start creating this us and them, or us and you dynamic, and you begin to feel othered, you don't feel as though you are a part of a camp. You don't feel inside the camp. And so this spreading thing, and you end up outside the camp, it's a similar kind of a dynamic that's taking place. And what's really interesting is we actually have a biblical case study for this that's to be found in Numbers chapter 12. Now, we read in Numbers chapter 12 that Miriam and Aharon, they're griping about Moses. He took this Cushite woman. Now, there's been lots of speculation as to why he did this, or why they did this, right? Were they upset because of her race? She's a Cushite. Maybe she's not a descendant of Israel. Maybe they're thinking, well, she's a foreigner biologically. We know that Moshe, having being Moshe, would be zealous to not break the Torah. So one presumes at least that she was not a pagan idol worshiper, that she was a servant of the Most High. And if she was a convert like Ruth, maybe. There are other people who have speculated, well, no, they were upset because she's from Cush, Ethiopia, so maybe her skin was darker, and this is why the consequence on Miriam was the leprosy, because if the complaint is that the Cushite woman's skin is dark, well, the response will be, okay, well, what happens to Miriam? She gets turned all white with leprosy, and shown that is not necessarily a good outcome. Other people have speculated, well, maybe it's because the Cushite woman was a second wife, right? Moses, he married the daughter of Yitro, the priest of Midian. So now he's taken this Cushite woman. Some people speculate it's the same woman. Some people are saying, well, Midian is the nationality. Ethiopia is the ethnicity. I don't know. I do know that Moshe had at least 3 people named as father-in-laws, or according to some people, it's the same person with 3 different names. Jethro and Hobab and Reuel. So we can all speculate till the cows come home, but what we do know is that Aharon and Miriam complained against Moshe, and this talking about him ends up with Miriam becoming leprous and being put outside the camp for 7 days. So we see this biblical connection between speaking against someone and then getting the consequence. And what's really interesting about that is in Torah, if you falsely accuse someone and you're trying to bring charges against them and it's unjust, then you are going to get the consequences of the crime for which you are trying to bring against the other person. Now, that I'm not talking about you thought genuinely, what have you, those kinds of things. When you're bringing a false accusation, like this person murdered someone or this person stole something or whatever, you bring that false accusation, you can then get the penalty. So here she is maligned Moses, or spoken against him in some way that could create a bad reputation for him in the camp, create this us and them dynamic. So you're socially putting someone outside of fellowship, and then she gets put outside the camp, and in response. And what's really interesting to this effect about about this topic to me is there are many reasons why people break fellowship. There are many reasons why people say, well, that church, that synagogue, that whatever isn't for me. There's a joke about a rabbi who he's in a shipwreck, and when the rescuers eventually find him a few years later, he has constructed 2 synagogues on the island, and the rescuers a little curious about this because the rabbi's the only one on the island at all. So he says to him, well, what's the deal with these 2 synagogues? And so the rabbi points to the one and said, that's the shul I go to every Shabbos, and they're like, and the other one, that's the one I won't set foot in. So yeah, and if you've spoken to many people who have been in the various faith traditions for a good long while, there's probably something similar to that. Oh yeah, I go to that church, but I won't ever go to that church. And when you actually look at the biblical rules for breaking fellowship, they're quite specific and few, right? It's there's nothing in there that says, well, I don't really like their worship music, or I think they're not teaching me the things that I want to learn, or whatever, right? They're generally speaking some pretty heavy stuff, right? Believers who are named believers that are living in, say, sexual immorality, you're not even supposed to eat with them. So there are things for which you break fellowship. The apostles, they talk about idolatry, blood, sexual immorality as being bare minimums for functioning in community, right? And we have specified things in the Torah for which you actually put somebody outside the camp, and it's not actually all that much. In terms of there aren't a lot of items that put you into this category, but we see people being put outside the camp unjustly. We see this happened to Yeshua. right? He was put outside the camp unjustly. We see that that there came a point where the rabbis decided that anybody who spoke in his name would be put outside the synagogue, right? This is spoken about in the Gospels, and we also get to a point where the apostles they're being confronted by the priests who are telling them and commanding them to no longer speak in the name of Yeshua. And they have to say, well, decide for yourselves whether it's better for us to listen to God or men. And that's a hard tension, On the one hand, you have leaders who are saying, well, this is a big controversial matter, and it's dividing our community, which Yeshua said that's what he came to do, to set a dividing line between people, and I'm paraphrasing, of course. And it played out just like that. So you have these apostles saying, okay, yeah, you're going to tell us not to do this, but this is the truth. He is the truth, and we will speak in his name, whatever the consequence. And so you have the tension between people who are trying to maintain the status quo for the sake of community unity, and you have people who are saying, well, we cannot ignore the truth of who the Messiah is for the sake of community unity. And if he is going to be a dividing truth, then we need to stand on that dividing truth. Like when Moses said, whoever's on the Lord's side, come to me. And all the Levites came, and they strapped on their swords. And there was a division in the camp, and they had to go and handle business. So there are things worth dividing over. There are truths worth dividing over. But those are pretty big and serious matters, and they're not little things like, I didn't like the worship music, or I just don't think he's teaching the things that I need to hear, or I need to say. Those are not the things. And he looked at me funny. Okay, maybe he was what was it in that movie, oh, I'm not smiling, it's gas, um, uh, Madagascar, hilarious movie. Anyway, we see in this passage, in this Torah portion, the stones of the house that are leprous, and they get removed and put outside the camp. If you are the kind of person that whenever you join a fellowship, that fellowship, there's something wrong with it, right? And it's the music's wrong, the teaching's wrong, the people are wrong, they're just not on fire for the Lord, whatever, there's always something. And you keep finding yourself outside that camp, and it's a repeat thing. Maybe the common denominator is you, right? And I'm not saying it necessarily is. If you get put outside the camp because of a truth like Yeshua being the Messiah, if you get put outside the camp because you are lovingly but firmly standing on a truth of the Word of God, okay. But if you're always in a place where you're talking bad about the leadership, you're talking bad about the fellowship, you're talking in these ways about the communities where you go, where everybody's not good enough, righteous enough, zealous enough, whatever, maybe you're that leprous stone that can't be allowed to remain in the house, right? In 1 Peter 2, we are told that we are being built up as living stones. Yeshua was the stone who was put outside the camp unjustly. And there are times where we can be put outside the camp unjustly. Being told to leave synagogue because you believe that Yeshua is the Messiah. There's nothing in Torah that says that you can't believe that Yeshua is Messiah. And in fact, the idea that no Jew ever has had wrong ideas about who the Messiah is, well, Rabbi Akiva, right? The Bar Kochba, Bar Koziba, that whole deal. I mean, there have been many people who were not the Messiah, and many Jews followed them, and our people got into some issues as a result. But those people are all still considered Jews, and the Rabbi Akiva is still highly respected in Israel. So just because you follow or believe someone that mainstream Judaism doesn't believe is the Messiah is not grounds to be put outside the camp. All these followers of Schneerson should, ironically, a rabbi who many people believe is the Messiah and he's dead and they believe he's going to come back but hasn't yet. There's some interesting parallels there, right? But they're considered Jewish. And if you want to talk about the 13 principles of faith as the reason why, you can discount anyone who believes that Yeshua is the Messiah as Jewish. Well, the followers of Yeshua as a sect of Judaism predates those principles of faith by a very long time, so it is an anachronistic application. But point being, while there may be unjust reasons for you to be put outside the camp, and while there may be just reasons for you to be put outside the camp, you start having a romantic, physical relationship with your father's wife, say. God forbid. Ew. Anyway, that would be a just reason for you to be put outside the camp, right? But let's say you're always finding yourself outside the camp. There's always something wrong with that community. There's always something wrong with that leadership. There's always something wrong with that teaching. There's always something wrong. And you have a long trail of communities that you've left because they were wrong, and you talked bad about them to every community that you went to since. Maybe you're the one engaging in lashon hara, the evil speech, evil tongue. You're the one engaging in the gossip. You're the one who is acting like that diseased stone in the house that needs to be removed. If that's your pattern, at least consider it, right? At least consider whether or not you're leaving fellowship righteously, whether you're building up the house as a solid stone while you're there, or whether you are acting like an infectious disease. Because fundamentally, it could be the one, it could be the other. And I'm not telling you which it is, because, well, everybody out there is different. I'm asking you and I'm inviting you to do a little introspection. If everybody is saying the same thing, or you keep saying the same thing about everybody, maybe the common denominator is you. And maybe it's not that all the houses are diseased. Maybe you're acting like a diseased stone that cannot be permitted to remain in a particular house because you will infect and corrupt the place. Yeah, so if you are that type, maybe look for the leprosy in yourself. Maybe look for that poison, whatever it is that keeps spreading, and ask the Almighty to help you remove it from you, and wash you clean, so that this corruption doesn't continue in your own life. If you are to be His house, if you are to be um, a holy vessel unto the Most High, then the leprosy, the Metzorah, the evil speech, the gossip, the things that are corrupt inside of you, they do need to be removed. And that has application to all of us, right? Anything in us that is not clean should not be in His house. So, if you want to be holy unto the Lord as He is holy, and we are called to be, then go through that sanctification process, the stages of becoming more clean, and ask Him to remove the uncleanness from you. Salvation is one thing, but sanctification is an ongoing process, and drawing closer unto Him. And at one point you're outside the camp, but then you're in the camp, and then after some time, then you get closer to His house, and then you draw closer into His presence, and all those kind of things. But it's a progression, right? Our lives and our walk and our spiritual journey is not a one and done event. It is a lifelong progression. So this is a call to introspection, to give yourself a fair self-assessment and ask, is it everybody else, or is it me? Shabbat Shalom.